Hello, Beyond the Visible. Indeed. BOV or BTV. Indeed. I'm fine, Icy. I woke up in a bad mood. It's cold last night. We had our first frost of the year. It was cold. I'm gonna have to start bundling up and all the way up in my sleeping bag before I go to bed. It's whatever, Icy. It's whatever. Just don't really know why I do what I do. But the Jets lost. That's nice. It's always good when the Jets lose. But if you're trying to get that tire full, it's taking that long. Weather is weather. Indeed, sunfish for the first time. That's cool. Fuck the Jets. Alec agreed. Fuck the Jets. Hate watching bad football though. Hey Tony, it's going alright. Your Cowboys won. Jets can't do anything right. They can't do the basics. Dak played a really good game, though. Dak played a really good game. That I don't remember whether it was a score or not, but in the first half, that audible, he called an audible to George Pickens on a slant. That was high-level quarterback play. High-level quarterback play. And then Justin Fields audibled in the same play later. Tried to bootleg around 2 free blitzers. I don't know if that's the difference in their experience, 5 versus 10 years. But I don't think so. Yeah. Dak really looked like he knew what he was doing today. He looked like he knew where he was going with the ball. He looks like he knows the offense. And the offense looks like it's tailored to his skill sets. The Cowboys looked really good today. Brian, son of Marty, really made a bid for a top 10 coach this week. The Cowboys looked really well coached. Well, I don't disagree, Tony, but the Cowboys looked like a playoff team today. They looked like a playoff team against the Packers, too. Diggs is hurt. Trayvon, he's hurt. You can tell he's hurt. He's only playing at like 65%. But if the defense just plays well enough, get a stop here, a stop there, a turnover, I think the Lions need to continue being untalked about because they might actually be the best team in the NFL. I thought they were going to take a step back, and their defense is so much better than it was last year. The Lions, they're a scary team. I don't know what they've done today. I didn't check in on any of the other scores. I watched the first half of the Browns and the Vikings. I thought the Browns were going to coast to an easy win, so I took a nap, and I woke up right as that game was expiring with a loss. So, wow, Browns, wow. The Vikings couldn't stop the run game into the middle of their defense, and so all I can assume is that the Browns stopped calling ISO. All you got to do is run the ball with ISO. But then Peter Gabriel's your quarterback, so I didn't know he was a lefty. They're taking a shot on these undersized lefties. Penix, Tua, Gabriel. I don't know. The Ravens are a bad team with a really good quarterback. The Ravens are a bad team with a good quarterback. And Campbell, I don't know that a lot of NFL fans really want to hear this, but an NFL head coach is happy to let his defense carry his team, especially through the first 17 or 18 weeks through the regular season, because the rules are set up in such a way that the defense wins. Yeah, the new Panthers. The Ravens are a bad team. They're a bad team with a really good quarterback. Lamar has covered up a lot of flaws for a long time, but they're a bad team, a remarkably bad team. They shouldn't be as bad as they are. But Derrick Henry, the defense has figured out that guy only carries the ball with one hand. No, I didn't hear about the guy in the Steelers who got robbed. I gotta start making some money again. So if you want to help a guy out, he needs weed money. I'm not going to be able to access my YouTube earnings this calendar year, and probably not for another calendar year after that. Heard that, Trigon. Thank you for the positive word. I don't actually know, Tony. Because it was only a matter of time before he played in a division that realized that runners who only carry the ball like this can have the ball punched out. Nah, you take care of you first. I'm just putting that out there for the future. If you want to help a brother out, I'm trying to find like $25 for weed, like $25 for nicotine, sometime this week. I can't get my YouTube earnings because I can't get my mail, Alec, because I'm homeless. I've been telling you guys this for 6 weeks. Can't get my YouTube earnings because I can't get my mail. That's the thing, is they teach them to carry the ball with two hands. And these guys, I've been thinking about this a lot, Tony. I'm not telling you that you wouldn't know this. I've been thinking about this a lot and not doing it in front of a camera. But they do teach you to carry it with two hands. And all I can figure is these guys get lazy because throughout high school and university and their first few years in the league, they were just so good. But like the Jets runner, Breece Hall, he got his ass benched today because on an ISO call, off guard, between guard center, he's carrying the ball with one hand. And so what does the linebacker do? Punch the ball out. He doesn't go for the tackle. He goes to punch the ball out. And it works. They're coached to cover it up. But I think I can't get a P.O. box anyway. I don't have two forms of ID. And I don't have any way of getting the second form of ID because I can't get my mail because I'm homeless. Can't get my social security card because I don't have two forms of ID. Can't get my birth certificate because I don't have a mailbox. There is a way I can get my stuff. It's on my profile stuff, Trigon. I can't, my Cash App is just it's just the $ Shaggy Philolitea. But I can't put anything in chat. So anyway, for the thank you, Tony. For the immediate future, my Patreon earnings are going to go to pay off the laptop. And that's going to take me about 3 months, maybe 4, depending on late fees and interest. I just bought one on credit that I can't pay back, Tony. I don't know if Cincy's playing today or not. They might have the week off. They might be playing. I don't know. I don't look at that stuff until I'm looking for a game or between games. And I chose to spend the fourth quarter of the Cowboys game here, so I just haven't looked. I don't know. I don't need to know. We move on. Oh, wow. Thank you, Dragon. That was a surprise. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm no longer looking for $50 for weed and nicotine. I'm glad to learn that about you, Tony. I bet on my audience and I lost. So here we are. Moving on. That's funny. It wouldn't be out of keeping with history for a sitting president to want their face on a coin. Hey, Rach. Presidents and emperors, kings, not presidents, kings, emperors, they used to put their face on the currency. It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't be out of keeping with history for Trump to want it. It's not going to happen. But his whole presidency is in keeping with the cult of personality of a sacred king. So he thinks of himself as King Arthur. Yeah, not many people use them. That's why he suggests putting his face on a coin that nobody uses. It creates scarcity for his cultists to feel important. Take care, H. It creates something rare from his presidency because his presidency will be over in 2 years. Hello, Ima. Thank you again, Dragon. I'm glad to have made your acquaintance. I'm glad that the shaggy dog thing worked on you. I told you a random story from my life and you kept coming around. I'm glad it worked. Thank you. It's very cool of you. How you doing, Ema? Yeah, as a marketing tool, it makes sense for Trump to want to do that. It doesn't make sense for the Treasury to stamp approval of doing that, but it's just a marketing tool. It makes total sense. It creates a collector's item with a year date on it. AOPM, and people will collect them. Like maybe they are $1. Doesn't the Treasury do that anyway? Don't they release commemorative coins? You see them on like late night TV commercials. I don't know if those are from the Treasury, if those are legitimate or not, now that I think about it. But you see commercials for commemorative coins all the time. So Trump throwing it out as an idea is what you're supposed to do as a chief executive officer, and he is our chief executive officer. That's cool, Tragon, that you collect things of anything. No, I don't. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not a pornographer, Ema, or a prostitute. The Broncos are about to pull that game off. We were talking about the Ravens earlier being a bad team, and the Texans got blown out earlier. So if the transitive property of football holds true, it doesn't. But if the transitive property of football holds true, the Ravens are in the bottom 5 of the NFL. They got spanked by a team that's been spanked by everybody they've played this year. I'm not joking, Ema, about the pornography or prostitution on Instagram. The only people on Instagram are pornographers, prostitutes, and people trying to purchase those things. I'm not joking. Everyone. There are only 2 reasons to use that site: to sell your body or to buy someone else's body. If you're pretending like it's something else, you're playing a game of parasocial reality, parasocial irreality that you don't understand. And so you're not using it for the thing that you don't understand. You're using it for one of the 2 things, and you're saying you're not. Everyone, Joe. I do too, Tragan. I prefer that we put symbols rather than people, because people failed. That's why Christians don't use Jesus' face. They use the cross or the fish or some other symbol. They don't put his face on their iconography. Not supposed to. There was a whole war about it. Many wars about it, but the iconoclasm thing happened. But like, you don't see people walking around with Jesus face pendants. You see people walking around with crucifixes. You see, it's about something else I don't understand. Tell me about my algorithm, Ema. Please, define prostitution before you tell me that everybody involved in it isn't a prostitute. Before you tell me I'm wrong, you have to tell me that you understand the words I'm saying. Ah, yes. The kind of pornography or prostitute that you search for is the kind of pornography or prostitute you will get. That is correct, Ema. Yeah? You find what you're looking for. Yes. By definition. I found it in the last place I looked. Why the fuck would you have kept looking? A scammer is a prostitute. OPM. Don't tell me what to do, Ema. Your name's Ema. Hello, Barbara. What up? It's my channel, Ema. Weird how that works. Like my whole identity is on it. My face is on it. Well, what is selling, Dragon? You think it's prostitution? You wouldn't know what to do with it, Ema. You would shrivel. You're soft like water. But what is prostitution? What is an institution? What is constitution? I don't know. I wish English had rules for how words were built so I could know what stitution is. But nobody will tell me. To establish that everybody on Instagram is a prostitute, buying a prostitute, or a pornographer. Pro-establishment. A pro-establisher. You're there to sell your work. You're prostituting. I'm technically prostituting right now. Like if I were to start talking about my Patreon and getting you to go to my Patreon and engage in my literary work is technically prostitution. To publicly set forth and establish. Technically, I am a prostitute. But no, I'm not on Instagram because I'm not a sex worker. Instagram is sex work. And what of it isn't sex work, as I said, is an imitation of a parasocial relationship that you don't understand. So you don't get to claim to be doing things that you don't understand, because you can't defend them, you can't apologize for them, you can't explain them. So if you're doing something that you disagree with, and you're differentiating it yourself by saying, but I'm not doing the thing I disagree with, you're doing the thing you disagree with. Thank you, Tragan. I established my arguments at etymology because these words we're using to argue with have significantly older antiquity than you and I. Is it esoteric or is it exoteric? Joe? The difference in esoteric and exoteric? Esoteric is internal and hidden. Exoteric is external and shown. It's the difference in the prefix, eso and exo. If you're gonna use words, know what the fuck they mean, Joe. I prefer not being sexually assaulted over and over and over by a limp dick prick named Ema. I feel like that's what she said. Yes, if what they want is your money, they're probably prostitutes. That's called whorage. Language is dope. Language will get you high on its own. I don't have enough cigarettes to sit out here and smoke cigarettes with you chuckle fucks. I have another pack back at the tent. I'm not worried about that. And I've got the $13 if I'm worried about that. I didn't have the money for cigarettes and weed, but Trigun covered that. Thank you, Trigun. W's in chat for Trigun if we can get that done. That'd be really cool. I woke up in a bad mood today, wanting to fight. And that's nobody's fault. I have bipolar type 2. I haven't talked about that in a long time. I manage it. I was in therapy for 18 months. I don't want to talk about why I was in therapy. I won't mention it again, Trigun, but you deserve the W's. I think it's Cincy. I think Cincy didn't they play in Europe last week? Didn't they play the Vikings in Ireland? I'm not using the NFL as a clock anymore or a calendar to organize my life. So I don't have good answers for this stuff. I do my best to engage in it as much and as often as I can justify, because it loses me money. So I have it at the fountain. Yeah, you don't owe me anything, Tony. That's what I'm saying. I try not to organize my life around the NFL clock and calendar anymore. I try to organize my life around the clock and calendar of engaging with you guys. I'm not being passive aggressive. I'm trying to be explicit and articulate and virtue signal on some level, but also I can't afford to make the NFL my life. I'll lose money. Yeah, I was in therapy for 18 months. I was in therapy for 18 months because I was in an abusive relationship. I was not the abuser. I was obviously the victim. And I was in that relationship for about 4 years. And about 2 years before it was over, uh, she threatened me with homelessness and to kill me. She threatened me with her gun. And so I called the cops. And the cops put me in HRSA for a week. And the hospital wouldn't let me out until I said that I was the abuser. So I did therapy for 18 months. So I had a record. Now, she didn't keep a record. Detroit is looking good. Baltimore's looking bad. Try again. The system is designed and has been designed since the Obama administration to hurt white men. It's been designed to make sure that we go to prison and we stay there. But a Baltimore Super Bowl isn't happening. At the beginning of the season, that was a good one, Tragan. And like you said, you don't watch. So don't make fun. You're allowed to react, but don't make fun. He doesn't watch. Don't chase people away for not watching, especially if we like it and would like to engage their intelligence in the game, because it's a fun game. And so anyway, I was doing therapy, so I had a record that I wasn't violent and that I had it under control. And we agreed actually before I was homeless that I had my BPD, my bipolar 2 under control. So when I say I have bipolar 2 and I don't talk about it and I don't use it as an excuse for what I'm going through, it's because it's something I've accepted. It's a part of myself, and it's something that I have under control in a meaningful way. In a meaningful way. It is nice. It was fucking cold last night, but it is. The sun is out, and it's doing its best, but we're not going to get it for much longer. Not like this. It's going to be beautiful and sunny and clear, but you won't be able to feel the sun. It's going to feel like it's a million miles away. Yeah, Baltimore was in the Super Bowl in the early aughts. Early, 02 or 03, something like that. And then they were back. Maybe it was 2000 even. And then they were back 16 or 17, a few years after Flacco, his 5th year, so 16. Did Baltimore play in the 9/11 Super Bowl? I couldn't remember who played in the 9/11 Super Bowl. Right, Chupapi. The system is designed to keep the poor, and the ideologically misaligned poor. It's designed to keep you impoverished. And so I don't need much. I keep trying to explain this to the people that I love that want to get close to me. I don't need much. But if I do ever have more than what I need, I want to earn it. I've earned everything I've ever had. But food, strangers and friends have provided my food for more of my life then they haven't. So I've been reading this book. As far as keeping the rich with money in their pockets, I don't think that makes sense. It makes sense as an effect, but it doesn't make sense as a cause. It doesn't make sense as a reason behind their decisions. So I'm reading this book. I think it's called Weavers, Scribes, and Kings. It's a history of the Near East, of Mesopotamia. And when I was reading John Keel a couple nights ago in Disneyland of the Gods, Keel is talking about Sumer. He's talking about the Near East. He's talking about the biblical time, because in the 1980s, even a pretty well-informed reader of public and even academic literature would know next to nothing about how deep the antiquity of the Near East, of Mesopotamia, is. It's only recently that science, that historical consensus agrees that the Bible is at least 2,000 years younger. At least 2,000 years younger, closer to 3,000 years younger than the Sumerian culture it was brought into. And so John Keel says that everything about their societies was about making the gods happy. And that's only kind of true. Because what he says is that these cultures were devoted to digging gold and silver for the gods. And that's only kind of true. Because something that somebody like Keel can't understand or doesn't conceptualize or doesn't think about is that precious metals are only available in certain places. It's not like you can go into your backyard and if you dig deep enough, you'll find gold. That's just not how that works. It's not like if you work hard enough, you'll find precious metals that you can give to the gods. Not how that works. Before we were interested in precious metals as a species, when Indo-Europeans, the Proto-Indo-Europeans, were first domesticating cattle and horses, you could work at it as hard as you wanted. But if you didn't do it in the right way, you were never domesticating that horse or that cow. Thank you, Alec. The rolling update will not bother me. Thank you. Is that Dave? Hey, Dave. Yeah, you're mistaken, Dragon. There was no back to the pre-flood era to go. And so this is what I'm talking about. The literature that you're reading that's giving you that idea, Trigon, is the same kind of literature that John Keel was producing in the 80s. It's the same because it's the same literature that was being produced in the 50s, and it's the same literature that was being produced in the late 1900s. It's literature that isn't keeping up with archaeology and what's actually being dug out of the ground. It's not keeping up with scientific consensus because it needs scientific consensus to be wrong in order for its culture heroes to be right. Lions and Bengals today, of course. That might explain why I'm here and not watching football. Okay. And so the literature, Trigon, that informs your assumption, and you don't want to assume if you want to be an intelligent person, and I know you want to be an intelligent person. An assumption makes an ass out of you and me. And assuming is something that you do with ritual clothing. You assume a position, you assume robes, you assume a mantle. You don't ever want to assume an idea. Yeah, that recent Egyptian discovery is horseshit. Everything about what that Italian team of scientists published is garbage. Everything about it. Just from the basics of geology up. They get everything wrong. They have no foundation of fact on which to build a theory. Those guys. So anyway, the literature that you're taking your assumptions from needs scientific consensus to be wrong because it needs the antiquity of the Middle East and the Near East to be significantly younger than what it is. And that's just not true. The people that settled the Mesopotamia, Sumer, the peoples that settled there, it took them about 2,000 years to settle there. It took them about 2,000 years to figure out how to manage the Tigris and Euphrates because the Tigris and Euphrates, the flood season for the Tigris and Euphrates, the flood season is the same season as harvest for their early grains, for their early corns. So they had to figure out how to divert these rivers so their plant that they were going to harvest wouldn't also be swept away, killed, and destroyed. And that took about 2,000 years. So the antiquity of Mesopotamia is actually connected to pre-flood peoples because it took the pre-flood peoples of Anatolia 2,000 years, about 5,000 to 7,000 years after the flood, to figure out how to settle in that region. So there was no figuring out how to get back to that. It was a contiguous culture that did that. They didn't start writing until about 1,500 years after they figured out how to settle on the Tigris and Euphrates, and it was the peoples who settled the Tigris and Euphrates who figured out writing. So we don't know the languages that came to Sumer, and Sumerian is a language isolate. But when the flood was happening, Göbekli Tepe was being built and agriculture was being developed. The flood is the Younger Dryas. The Younger Dryas is a rapid thawing of the polar caps during the Ice Age, which isn't an ice age for the entire planet. It's only an ice age from the perspective of Indo-European speaking peoples before the Indo-European speaking peoples ever thought to exist. Something like 8,000 years before the Proto-Indo-European language emerged. It wasn't an ice age. The Earth above about the 37th lateral parallel, I think is what that's called, 37th latitude, that was ice, but everything below that until about that parallel in the southern hemisphere was lush, beautiful jungle. Sumer wasn't a desert like we think of it until many thousands of years after the Ice Age. Those flood myths stuck around because the people that came south from Anatolia around the 36th parallel, or whichever one is one south of 37, that people experienced a cataclysmic flood. And then many thousands of years later, about 8,000 years later, their languages still had those stories and arrived in Sumer. In the same way that about 2,000 years later, about 3,000 years later, when the Jewish-speaking people were brought into exile, they had to account for this myth now. That myth enters the biblical canon around 250 BC. It has no antiquity before that. They didn't talk about it. They didn't reference it. When Amos is writing in the 700s or the 450s, whichever is Amos, when he's writing, he's not talking about how just like God cursed Noah with the flood, he's going to curse Israel with the Akkadians. He doesn't say that. He mentions being led out of Egypt, but being led out of Egypt means being led out of bondage in Egypt to the gold mines in Kish. Well, the gold mines in Kish were Sumerian, so they were also bound to Sumeria before they were bound to Egypt. So in order to arrive at all these bad ideas, you have to reject the actual archaeology. The archaeology is in stone. Stone doesn't lie. It has no reason to lie. And before the Iron Age, governments had no reason to lie. No one but the government could read what they were writing. So I've been reading this book. And when John Keel said that everything was devoted to getting gold to the gods, it's just not true. It was true of some cities. It was true of Akkad, because Akkad didn't have access to gold. So Akkad had to trade with whichever one to the south that had access to gold. But they did that by making the best wool clothing in the world. And so they took this amazing wool clothing and turned it into gold via commerce. The whole expanding empires based on acquiring material resources like gold, that doesn't happen until the Sumerian language is dead. In the 1980s, the only king anybody knew from that period was Hammurabi. And Hammurabi is near the end of the story. Hammurabi is very near the end of the story. Hammurabi in his own time would have thought of himself as unimportant in the story of Mesopotamia. And so the gods needed gold. They needed gold because wood, wool, and stone erode to nothing. The gods are permanent. And so if you make a representation of a god that erodes to nothing, eventually it will be ugly. And the gods aren't ugly. The gods don't erode over time. What do all Christians say? What do all Jews say? The message didn't erode. The message didn't change. The message is golden over time. God is golden. Why is God golden? Because gold doesn't tarnish. Bronze will eventually rust. It gets that patina of green. That's why the Statue of Liberty is green. She's bronze. She's supposed to gleam like the sun. But the larger the statue in bronze, the more time and effort it requires to keep it clean. And if you're going to stick it out in the middle of a saltwater ocean, you know what it's going to do? It's going to turn green yesterday. It's going to turn green before you get it there. Iron too. Iron will rust. But if that statue were made of gold, it would not rust, ever. And cleaning it would be an act of majesty. It would be an act of reverence. You would want to go do that every day. It's gold. Look at how rare and special this substance is. And because of how easy it is to form, look at how detailed the craftsmanship can be up this close. Cleaning it would be it would be something that you wanted to do. It would be a high paying and high demand job, like high priest of a temple maybe. And then you would start to have whole hierarchies of employment around making sure these statues are beautiful, like they did. Like they did with the stone ones as well. But you know what happens every time you clean a stone statue? You take some of the stone with you. That's why they let the Sphinx get buried up in the sand. You know what's not going to happen to the Sphinx if it's buried in the sand? The sand's not going to blast its features away. The sand's not going to erode it to nothing. That's why they let the pyramids get buried in the sand. That's why they deliberately buried Göbekli Tepe. You know what's not going to happen if we deliberately bury these temple mounds, these circle mounds, or I'm sorry, these circle structures into mounds? You know what's not going to happen? They're not going to erode to nothing over tens of thousands of years. Because you can't conceptualize tens of thousands of years. Fine. These specialists could. It was their entire job to sit and conceptualize tens of thousands of years. A geologist's entire job is to conceptualize in their mind the passage of tens of thousands of years when they look at a rock. And these people who are responsible for maintaining these outdoor, open, these stone edifices, they didn't need a 10,000 year lifespan to see the effect on the oldest stones compared with the newest ones. Bible code is also garbage. Bible code is people trying really hard to justify their work with a text that no one cares about. I'm not ranting. I'm not even emotional. I'm educating, teaching. There were very good reasons why these people did the things they did. And alternate history and public history want to educate you wrongly so you'll spend your money on them. Museums, for as long as they've existed, have relied on myth, folklore, and marketing to get people to come to them. Why do you think the Library of Alexandria was so famous? It stole your books. Imagine how much you would like a library that every time you walked in it, the police were allowed to frisk you for any books and keep them. How much would you like going to Alexandria? How much do you like going to the airport? Imagine if every time you went to the airport, they just kept your books. Whatever books you got, they kept them there to sell to people who were in the airport. Imagine that. How much would you like that, actually? And how much would you think it was a great loss to history if some fanatics burned it down? How great a loss to history would it be if Grand Central Station were just burned to the ground today? How much would it actually be a loss to history? How much? I posit very little. Negligible. In 2,000 years, are they really going to care? Some specialist in New York is going to give a fuck. But are you, in 2,000 years, going to give a shit? No. And so anyway, there's a flood narrative in Gilgamesh because there had to be. And the thing about Utnapishtim, the only survivor from the flood, is that he's also immortal. He's immortal. He's a keeper of all wisdom. He and his wife, they have no children. They live at the end of the earth. And there's a mystery there. There's a mystery there. Why is an immortal human not king himself? Can't kill him. Can't take the sacred crown from him. They would have known as well as we do that men are fertile until they're not. So what, does fertility stop after 2,000 years? Why has he removed himself so far away if he knows all knowledge? If he knows everything there is to know? What you got to understand is, in the ancient world, that didn't mean what we think it means. What do you give a shit about the way atoms work? Did you give a fuck when they were teaching you in school? What do you give a shit to know that? What do you give a shit to know about? You want to know how to get a job. You want to know how to get laid consistently. You want to know how to maintain a steady relationship. You want to know how to bring people consistently back to you in a loving and concerned way. You want loyalty. You want an Eric in your company. What else do you want, though? You want abundance. You want more food than you can eat. You might even want more sex than you can say no to or say yes to. What else? Interested and want mean different things, Joe. Interested and want mean different things. Biologically, your body wants copulation. Wants, lacks. Interested. What is interest? Hey, take care, Dragon. Thank you for everything you've done for the channel in the short time you've been around. I'm glad I listened to those weird nerds. Want doesn't mean desire, it means lack. Lack. I don't care if I'm making you uncomfortable. It means lack. You want for comfort because the world is trying to kill you. And so what does all knowledge mean to a person in 3500 BCE, 5,000 years ago? What does all knowledge mean? What does the knowledge that a king wants mean? He doesn't want to know how to make purple dye. He doesn't give a fuck about how to make purple dye. He doesn't give a fuck about the process of gold plating copper or lead, tin. He doesn't care about the ins and outs of settlement money. That's right, Eric. He doesn't care. What's the knowledge that he wants? I would posit that the knowledge that a king wants is how to live without causing anyone harm. If you go back and listen, I performed the first half of Gilgamesh up until the death of Enkidu. And what does Enkidu do up until the death of, what does Gilgamesh do until the death of Enkidu? Thank you, Alec. He gets people killed. Indirectly and directly, he harms everything. Everything he does results in harm to everyone around him, directly or indirectly, of his choices. So what does it mean to live a good life? Why does he want to be immortal? That's how long it would take to learn, even given all of the knowledge in the world, how to implement it in a way that you don't harm anyone. Why does Utnapishtim live so far away? Because no matter what he does, he's going to cause harm. So he causes the least harm to the greatest many, and he removes himself to a place where only those who work the hardest will be able to find him and seek his wisdom, seek his knowledge, seek his help. Because now he's 8,000 years old in 3500 BCE. And they know that. That's the thing, is the people hearing these stories, they know he's 8,000 years old. They may have broken off in the story to be like, this was 8,000 years ago, the flood. 8,000 years ago. And then continue. Utnapishtim is 8,000 years old. What does his intervention do? What's he gonna do? What's he gonna do? Enkidu has been cursed by Inanna because Gilgamesh killed the bull of heaven. What's Utnapishtim gonna do? How does he intervene? And let's say he did live in Ur with Gilgamesh and Enkidu before they went to fight Humbaba. He's just one of the Council of Elders. He's just one of the Council of Elders. So there are 13 of them. He's one of 13. And 12 say, yeah, go have fun. And he says, no, this is a bad idea. What does it matter? What does it affect positively? What does it change? What does it change if he's in the story from the beginning? Those of you who know how the story ends, what's it change for Gilgamesh? Meeting Utnapishtim. And what would Utnapishtim's intervention done positively for Gilgamesh? 8,000 years of experience. After about the first 80, after about the first 35, your participation in the narrative of civilization circa 11,000 BCE is over. You've suffered an injury. Your athleticism left 10 years ago. By 35, you're on a downward slope at 25. The moment you become a professional athlete, you're already on the downward slope. So how do you directly intervene? How do you help Gilgamesh fight Humbaba? And what does your knowledge of his weaknesses help in a material way? What does immortality help? For how long can Gilgamesh continue to intervene as sacred king, able to defend himself, if he's also immortal? Because immortality didn't come with stasis at the age you became immortal back then. They knew what it would do to your body. They knew what not dying forever would look like. So what is this bag of bones, Utnapishtim, gonna do? How's he help? What does he say? He removes himself as far away as he can get, to the end of the earth, because he doesn't need as much as other people. He knows better. He knows that with creature comforts come overhead, creature costs, sacrifices that must be made, compromises that must be made. Including progeny. He and his wife live out there without children. They're 8,000 years old. She can barely grind enough meal for them anymore to make bread. And what's he hunting? Now, before we stamped presidents' faces on coins, the gold and the silver were about they're not tarnishing. And not everybody had access to them. Only certain places were settled around gold mines, or around gold deposits. We didn't have in the 80s when John Keel was writing. 87 is when he wrote Disneyland of the Gods. We didn't have much. We, the public, didn't have much. We didn't have access to much. But I've been reading these books about Sumer. I've been listening to people like Irving Finkel, other Sumeriologists, talk about this stuff for at least a decade. Specifically Sumer. I put off Sumer and Mesopotamia because I knew from what I'd heard Egyptologists say about Sumer that we didn't know as much, even by the time I was graduating high school, 05. So I may have put it off as much as a decade on purpose until 2015, but by 2015 I was ready. I read Gilgamesh for the first time in 2016. I've read it many times since. I've read much of the Gilgamesh poems and songs that aren't the epic. Gilgamesh is very much a King Arthur figure, in that he shows up in a lot of stories that antedate his life. So Akkad's rise was maybe as much as 2,000 years after Gilgamesh and his historical period, but the rise of Akkad and the wars between Ur and Akkad are documented as wars between Gilgamesh and Aga, Akkad's king. So Ur saw itself in terms of Gilgamesh. Its men were meant to embody Gilgamesh, to behave like Gilgamesh would behave if he had their 2,000 years of hindsight. Because the children can have the 2,000 years of accurate hindsight. This is what a moral is. Someone's morality is looking at what they've done in hindsight. Someone's individual morality is their own explanation, their own apology for their own outcomes in hindsight. Morality is bullshit. I can moralize all I want. Why should you care? Who am I? You're still trying to figure out what my sin is or is not. Because what I want is to talk to a larger audience of people who don't listen to me. While I'm asking you to imagine what it would be like to, for 8,000 years, remove yourself from human civilization. And then I'm asking you to imagine the perspective of a people group who don't see that as a crime. Because Democrats expect Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, they would expect Joe Biden to continue making public appearances, to continue to embody the presidency, the Democrat presidency specifically. They still want Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, AOC out in public informing women of how Democrat women are supposed to behave. Kamala Harris. They still want them out in public. You put your face on a coin. The Sumerians, there was one particular people group, it might have been the Akkadians, but they dated their years, they named their years, not based on their king or their gods or star signs or whatever else other ancient peoples did. They named their years based on effectively their president. They had a person whose job it was to make sure that people paid their taxes and listened to the government and did this. Effectively, they had a chief executive officer of their government. And their years were named for that person, and that person was selected almost at random. But the office came with so much responsibility that actually we know more about those people and those people than some of their kings. Because they took it so seriously. Service to the state is something that's completely unthinkable to people today. Hell, service for your employer is just unthinkable to people today. But what do we service? What do we maintain? I've gotten in an argument with some of you here on the channel before about how things used to be made to last. But made can be idiomatically used in two different ways there. Hey, Enoch. Made can be used idiomatically in two ways there. Because something can be made, something can be created, and something can also be made, as in it can be demanded. Artifice means by human will. Something to be made means with will. And only one thing has will. Life. Living things have will. But only one thing makes things. Humans make things. And so when you make something to last, you can drop that to and it's the same verb. You can create something that lasts by merit of the way it was made, which doesn't exist, that's never happened. Or you can make it last by maintaining it in such a way that it will last. So you can make it last by willing it to last, or you can make it last by willing that it lasts. It's the same thing. It's the same conception. Serving the state is maintenance to the state. What do you say? I'm going to go get my car serviced. What are you doing? You're having someone else maintain your car. Service to the state is unthinkable. Why? Maintaining union is just it's the last thing we think. It's literally unthinkable. Social nomads. That's what the internet has made us. Social nomads. Not even nomads, really. You don't want to hear this, but social crackheads is what the internet has made you. You're crackheads, children. That's why. Because you're crackheads. All right, Alec. I'm ready to go watch my Bengals lose. Thank you for talking me through it, buddy. It's been an hour of that shit, and I don't have any more cigarettes, so let's go inside and torture myself. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you again to Tragan. If I were only doing these for the money, when I get those tips, I would just fucking bail. I hope you know that. I hope that's obvious. Because I don't know what you know. I don't know if this is obvious to you, but I can't know what you know. I can't know what's obvious to you. I can't know what you see. I can't know what you take away. All I can do is evaluate you between engagements. And so that means the only thing I can do is treat you like your teachers did. Just examine you at all times. So it wouldn't matter how close or how far I habitate to you, how close I keep my home to you. I can't actually intervene. No matter how much better I know than you. Sometimes I just have to let you fail. Even if it's my life that suffers. Because if it's my life that suffers, because the things you believe, the things that you presuppose, or that you prejudge are factually incorrect, if it's my life that suffers, it's not yours. If you learn the lesson. All I can do is expose the consequences. What is it called when somebody writes a book exposing consequences? Expose that. Yeah, expose. I can expose it. History, Eric. The word history in Greek means investigation. There are two ways. There are two ways to investigate a suspect in a crime. You can let them know they're a suspect in a crime, and you cannot let them know that they're a suspect in the crime. So it's like I was watching this TikTok the other day, and the theme of the TikTok video was that y'all doing wrong, and yet, yes, I'm entrapping them, that y'all are doing wrong, you know you're doing wrong, and you don't want to hear about how you're doing wrong. So you just la 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 la. So if I'm going to convince you that you're doing wrong and that you need to change your approach because it's factually wrong, Right. That's right, Eric. I can let you know that's what I'm doing, or I cannot let you know that's what I'm doing. And how you react to it's up to you. That's the fun. Fun is relative. Okay, well, I hope I left that at the... Okay. Anyway, thank you guys for being here. I have to figure some things out in my personal life, and I will be right back. I'll be right back is relative. I'll see you sometime later. If not tonight, tomorrow. And we'll have more Schedule 1 tomorrow, more Shaggy Phil. So thank you guys. Really. The fountains are brought to you by my Patreon subscribers, most specifically Alex Smith, also NBT Alec here on YouTube, here in the chat. Make sure you check out his work. He's been going live. Mr. S, also Quaz here. He shows up in the chat sometimes late at night. And typical Rachel. You guys know Rachel. But you gotta help her out too. She's not made out of money. And neither is Alec. Or Mr. S. So thank you again, Dragon. Have a great day, guys.